Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to, I think this is our first ENG talk of this year, but certainly our most impressive college accomplishment of the year. We've had this re-engineered first-year program going now for 2 full years, and the vision started before I arrived, so more than 5 years ago. The idea here was to say, you know, first-year engineering isn't really working great for anybody, and it hasn't worked great for anybody for about 40 years. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and somehow people survive. So we think, oh, it can't be that bad. But actually, we think it could be a lot better. So when I started as a faculty member back in 1992, we actually knew almost nothing about how to teach engineering well. We knew lots about what we needed to teach, but not a lot about how to do it in a way that would be memorable, impactful, even effective. And since then, we have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. But what I've asked Sean to talk about today, and I know he'll do a great job because I've seen him do it at major universities across the country. Well, I only saw one, but I know that he's done it well at other places. And he is the keynote speaker for Queen's Teaching Development Day later this month. So yeah, Kevin DeLuzio is a fan. He's also a friend of mine. But it's how does competency-based assessment work? Because it's a different way of thinking about university learning and testing. And it's a different way to think about how to build great engineers. The other thing it is it's the way that professional engineering regulators have moved in their certification of new engineers. So they're no longer doing the give me a letter from your supervisor and we'll believe it's okay. They're actually doing competency-based assessment. So it sets our students up for what they're going to see down the road. I think it's a really exciting way to do education in a better way. It's also a little bit of work to get your mind around, but most good things require a little bit of work to get used to. Sean is one of our great faculty members. He came to us from Mount Royal in Calgary, where he had lots of experience with their first-year program. So Sean's a great member of the college. He's a passionate instructor, and he actually does his homework and doesn't just get excited about it. He does it in a really grounded way. So Sean, thanks for agreeing to spend some of your time with us today. I will give you the microphone.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. That's very kind of you. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about the first-year program and competency-based assessment. That'll be one of the main things we talk about, but it's an introduction to the first-year program with an emphasis on the assessment system. These are the core principles of CBA. And I say these are the core principles of CBA. After lots of reading, after lots of experience, after lots of discussions, after meeting colleagues across the world and across Canada on this topic, this is sort of my distillation. So if you don't like it, it's on me. You won't find a paper or any document with these 5, but what you will find is any literature on CBA will have these elements somewhere in them. I call them something slightly different, but these are common elements. Number 1, assessment is focused on learning outcomes. For example, I want our students to be able to add multiple two-dimensional force vectors together. That's a skill. Can our students add multiple 2D force vectors together? That's a learning outcome. We want them to be able to do that. We are going to assess that skill. We're going to give the students multiple chances to do that. Competency-based assessment. Learners are given multiple opportunities to show their competency. Number 3, timely, high-quality formative feedback is going to facilitate learning between those iterations. So you don't actually, well, this gets to the next one. You don't actually have to be brilliant off the start. We just want you to be able to do it by the end. And that means we got to give you feedback and help you get better if you're having problems, which gets to principle number 4. Grades are based on where a learner gets to, not how they got there. So if you failed assignment 1 and failed assignment 2 and failed assignment 3 and then got it on the test, the module test or whatever, that's good. You got it. We don't care that you took some time to get it. In a conventional assessment system, you get dinged every time. You know, assignments are worth 15, 20% of the grade. So if you're failing those, that's hurting you. If you're failing those, it shouldn't be hurting you. Those are learning opportunities, formative learning opportunities. We do need you to know it by the end, but we don't need you to know it at the start. And so if you come in and you have some problems, that's okay. You can stumble and you can pick yourself up. Principle number 5. And this is difficult for some people, and mostly professors. Performance expectations are clear and transparent to all. I'm going to give you an example of all this in a minute. And honestly, one of the funniest things we get as a response from some people is, well, if you do that, the students can do well. As if that was a problem. So we are trying to create success. And fairness helps with success. So we are focused on learning outcomes. You get multiple shots at them. We're giving you feedback as you go. You only need to finish strong. You don't have to be brilliant on day 1 in whatever learning outcome we're talking about. And everybody knows what's expected all the way along. Now, what does all this mean? Let me interpret those principles into something more practical. Again, this is a little hard for some people sometimes. In a conventional assessment system, the weights are put on assignments, tests, exams, labs, not in competency-based assessment. The grade weights are put on learning outcomes. So for example, being able to add multiple 2D force vectors together, that has a weighting. Not an assignment. I always know if somebody doesn't get it because they go, but then how much is this assignment worth? It depends. It depends on a lot of things, but we can say what the learning outcomes are worth. Come on in if you want. Learners are often evaluated multiple times on learning outcomes. We try for a minimum of 3 times on each learning outcome. There's some that we have trouble with that on, maybe it's 2. Some could be 4 or 5, but typically 3 is what we shoot for. They get useful feedback rapidly. That helps students improve. That's a challenge on our side. And we've been meeting that challenge. And students recognize that because they know in second year that they appreciate the fact that they got feedback quickly in first year. And learners just need to get it by the last evaluation. You don't have to get it on the first evaluation. So there's no pressure to understand it immediately. And that helps reduce the tension in the room. Learners know what they're being evaluated on at every evaluation. We tell you what we're going to mark on that assignment, which learning outcomes. We tell you which learning outcomes are going to be on the tests. That's where some professors go, but then they can do well. But it's fair that they know what they're going to get tested on, because then they can prepare and they know what they're preparing for. Learners know how well they have to do on any learning outcome. Now this, we've had an interesting marketing campaign for our new first year. One of the major bylines has been, no exams, no finals. Technically that is true, but we actually have a lot of testing. And in the same breath, what we found is that the first year students will say, it's easier because we have multiple chances. If we stumble, we can pick ourselves up. And in the same breath, they'll say, but it's harder because you have higher standards. Because sort of the core material of the modules, they have to get at least 70% on, not 50. not 60, but 70. In other words, to pass the module, to pass a course, you have to actually be half decent at doing those core skills. But you do get multiple chances. You even get what we call top-ups. Even after a module test, if you've failed a learning outcome, you get another shot with a top-up. So there are multiple chances, but students have, that's what they found a little challenging, that they actually are held to account. They have to perform half decently. And that ensures that when they go into second year, they actually know how to do the stuff that the professors in second year and third year would be hoping for. An example, a concrete example. Consider a learning outcome where students must add multiple 2D force vectors together. Deb, you were wondering why I was writing on the board? There, those are 3 2D force vectors, resulting in this resultant. Now, maybe a student can do this or they can't on their first try, but on the next assignment, there might be a, and then they have to get that. Again, same sort of question. Hopefully, as we go along, they will be able to do this. And if they can, then that module test at the end isn't going to be very hard because it's the same type of question. We're not really trying to trick anybody here. We want students to be able to do this. And we're going to give a series of questions like this and practice problems. We might say that this learning outcome is worth 10% of the grade for the learning module that it's found in. And we'll have 2 or 3 modules in a course typically. So maybe that's worth 10% of the learning module, that learning outcome. Students get 3 or 4 chances at it, probably on some assignments and a module test to show that they can do that. They get feedback on each submission before the next submission is due that covers that learning outcome. Have an opportunity to get help to do better, plus with that TAing in the afternoons. If they can't do it initially, it's okay. They can learn from the mistakes and from the feedback and do better the next time. They just need to be able to do it well by the module test and on the module test. And we have other models for this, like for design, there's no module test for design. We just have a series of assignments. But the last assignment is kind of like a module test. That's where you got to make sure you can do it by then on that last assignment. But it's the same across multiple types of courses. What well means is explained through a grading rubric for the learning outcome. And we share that rubric with the students right from day one. They know what they have to do to get that 70%. We have 6 categories of grades. And from mastery, developing mastery, competency, developing competency, not yet competent, and didn't hand in anything. So we have these categories, and you got to get to that 70% level, which is the developing competency. They also, students, know ahead of time when each LO will be evaluated during a module. So they're going to know, this assignment covers these things. That module test covers these learning outcomes. They will know that, and they can study for it. Students universally feel that this is a much fairer system compared to, it's final exam time. We're going to have 6 questions on the final exam from a possibility of 20 or 30 topics covered in the course. Could be any level of difficulty. Good luck. And then after that, what can we say about what the student knew or didn't know or could do or couldn't do? There isn't a lot of research on competency-based assessment on the long-term effects of how effective it is. There isn't. I'm not going to try and fool anybody here. But I will say this, having worked in the old system and the new system with similar courses, the quality of the work of students on the module tests compared to final exams in the same topic areas, statics and dynamics tests, is clearly better. For those who are passing, they actually can do stuff. They know what they're doing on the basics, maybe not on the super hard questions, but on the bread and butter, meat and potato stuff, they're better. I would bet my life on it. So why use CBA? Well, It can reduce learner stress because of the stumble and recover, the multiple chances idea. Grades actually mean something. You get graded on each learning outcome. We can look at our results and say, you knew how to do this, you didn't know how to do that. Overall, we know what the grades mean. It may improve learning because early failures can be formative learning opportunities. And the students who get this capitalize on it. Now we have to help students get that because they're not used to this. It might improve teaching. It may improve teaching because of constructive alignment. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute to show you what constructive alignment's about, but it's making us better teachers. CBA is fairer to learners, as I mentioned before. We know learner skill levels more accurately and more precisely, and passing actually means something. You cannot pass one of our courses without having met that competency threshold across the board. Even if you got a 50, it means you did that. So a 50 means you can actually do all the basics. And that's with some mathemagic in terms of the grade calculation, but that is guaranteed. It works for more learners with more diverse backgrounds and preparations. They have the opportunity to not be great immediately and to pick it up. And that helps a variety of people in a variety of circumstances. It better handles sickness and lateness. And we learned this in COVID. We were actually worried about this. And it turned out to be one of the major advantages. Somebody's sick for a test. Don't worry. There's going to be a top-up. It'll cover the same learning outcomes. Oh, you missed an assignment. Don't worry. It's going to be covered again. Lateness. Competency-based assessment does not handle lateness well because lateness is not a competency. So what do you do with it? Well, you just give them 0. They go, oh, I got 0. Well, you're going to hit those learning outcomes again. So don't leave it late next time. We've really reduced the lateness on submissions because they get their one scare and then they don't do it again. But we can afford to be tough. Learners have choices in how they navigate the system and they can develop prioritization skills. If this is the second or third time we're looking at a learning outcome, say before a module test, then you know what you're doing. Maybe you don't do that assignment because you got another assignment which you got more problems with. You may prioritize things, which is a valuable skill for later years. And again, we try to coach the students on this. And finally, another big plus. We can have program learning outcomes. These are learning outcomes that cut across multiple courses, like safety skills for labs in any lab course, for technical communication skills across many courses. It gives the legitimate, valid message that we care about those learning outcomes, not just in a technical communication course, which has been the bane of, Deb's existence as an educator. It's like, after they leave this technical communication course, it doesn't matter anymore. It does matter. And we make it matter. And that's why it can be really valuable in building in program learning outcomes. We have them about generalized problem solving skills, tech comm, and safety, and lab skills. That constructive alignment thing, I want to take a moment to tell you about constructive alignment. This is the thing I'm most excited about in education lately. And that is, we have learning outcomes and we have learning activities that are focused on those learning outcomes. And then we assess those learning outcomes. And we have learning outcomes that help you prepare for the assessments. Let me ask you this. How many of you have ever taken a test and there was a question on that test that you really hadn't been taught how to handle before? Has that ever happened to anybody? Okay, so the assessment didn't actually cover, they didn't tell you what the learning outcome was, and the assessment was on something you didn't even know you're supposed to be ready for. How about this? I studied for this one type of question and it wasn't on the test. Yeah, exactly. Has that ever happened to you? Of course it has. They assessed something that they didn't teach. They didn't assess something they did teach. This happens all the time. So what constructive alignment says is, What are the learning outcomes? We're going to teach to them. We're going to assess them, and we're going to teach to those assessments. That means being open about what we're doing, transparent, and it means really focusing. We're not going to, I mean, we might have a little sidebar story, anecdotal story, but we're teaching you the stuff you need to do the job. We're not teaching stuff you don't need, and we are teaching what you do need. And we're keeping our assessments fair with that. Competency assessment and competency-based assessment, or sorry, constructive alignment and competency-based assessment go together like peanut butter and jam, ham and pineapple, you know, Bonnie and Clyde. Like they really fit together and they make us better teachers. And that's something we're very encouraged about. I'm almost done. Any downsides of CBA? Well, I'm not going to try and fool you. There's a laundry list, but I'm going to tell you it's still worth it. So number one, it can increase student stress because they actually have to meet standards. And in our case, with our system, by and on the module tests. There are many formative learning opportunities, but what it really means is that there's a lot of stuff to do and a lot of work to grade, and that's hard for the students and the staff in terms of the volume of work, and we're trying to get a grasp on that. High quality, timely grading is easy to say, hard to do. That's a challenge we have in implementation. The system can be a little tricky to learn. I hope I've made sense tonight, but it is a complex system. It's not this assignment was worth 10%. It's not that. It's a bit more tricky. It can be reductionist. This is the critique that's been in the medical education system, that they're just saying, can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that? You're a doctor. Okay. How do we handle that in engineering? Because we want you to be able to do this and do this and do this, but we need you to be able to tie those together. We have a way. This is the way. So, Parrot the Mandalorian. We have developed a system that is evolving in a positive direction that addresses this shortcoming. So we are very happy about that. And Joel and I are working on that this summer, so we're going to roll it out in the fall. CBA does not work on short courses. Now, here's the big test. If you guys get this, if you understand CBA, why doesn't it work on short courses? Like, say, a 3-week course or something.
You only have time to test the once.
Exactly. You don't have time to do that iteration. Good. Our dean knows what's going on. Excellent. That's why she's a dean. So we can't iterate enough. We've learned not to do it with short courses. No, the literature doesn't really tell you that. You have to figure it out yourself. CBA does not help non-adaptive learners who are having trouble in multiple courses. This has been the biggest bane of our existence in the last 2 years. Top students, great. Solid students, they really like it. Students who are having a little bit of trouble, great. But for students who are having a lot of trouble across the board, it doesn't work. And we're sad about that. But the problem is that the students just keep doing the same thing each time. They're not changing, they're not adapting. And we're trying to help them with that. But in that situation, we encourage the students to go half speed. If it's just too much, we have a half speed option. We encourage to go half speed. I mean, COVID's been rough on everybody. And students who've gone through high school may or may not be adequately prepared for university. We haven't relaxed our standards per se, but if things didn't work well in high school, how do we cope with that? Well, we got our summer top-ups, we've got competency-based assessment, which helps. But if that's not enough, going half speed can be a good solution, and we do have that. The devil's in the details. This is an intricate system. If we as instructors screw up, like if we designate a type of question incorrectly, it can lead to a lot of grief. We have to be on our best game. So that's a challenge. And then finally, there's no free lunch. This is a challenging system to implement, and there you go. So Continuous improvement. We are working on monitoring how things are moving. We are surveying first years, second years, analyzing admissions, first year performance. We are looking at how others are doing CBA, how we can do better. We are experimenting each year with new ideas, and we are changing each year, making improvements to address weak spots, training ourselves, training teaching assistants to do the system. We are sharing CBA experiences and lessons across Canada, and we're a leader in that regard now, as Suzanne was mentioning. We're working on integrating better with arts and science courses, and that's an ongoing process. We have a lot of cooperation with arts and science, and we're working hard on that. We are striving to achieve more consistency in CBA and constructive alignment within our team. That's going to be a focus this year. Make sure we're not getting sloppy. Managing workload better for students and staff is a big deal. We are focusing on that as well. And improving support before students begin in September. These are our main activities. And in terms of acknowledgements, I want to point out Aaron Phoenix was an associate dean academic long ago. And he and I came up with this crazy idea sitting down over lunch one time. Bruce Sparling, he's retired now, but he was associate dean academic who carried the ball at that level through the whole development process. Our dean, Suzanne Cresta, did the same thing at the decanal level. And Deb Rolfa is our unit head, who was also our defender at that level. So these administrators really helped us. And Akindele, who is our new associate dean academic, he's been a solid hero for us, and we really appreciate that. Wendy James is the head of the Gwenamoss Teaching and Learning Center. She got us onto the CBA thing. Don't blame her if you don't like it. we made it our own, but she got us onto this. Ron and Jane Graham have helped fund this, as have the U of S Curriculum Innovation Fund, APEGS, and the Engineering Advancement Trust. We want to thank the first year engineering students of 2020, 21, and 22 for putting up with us and learning with us. And here's the team. This is our core instructional re-engineered team. Joel's in the audience tonight. So Suzanne, of course, Deb. And then these are the people who over the last 2 years who've done a lot of heavy lifting here to make this happen. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, Rusty. Well, that wasn't bad. It was a little less than an hour. Yep.
But I do want to make sure we've got people that are in the program, people that are not in the program.